In this video, I will show you how to add a sidebar notification to the bottom of your page once your form has been successfully submitted. This will give the user additional feedback that something actually happened when they submitted the form. This is probably the most complicated HTML, CSS, and JavaScript example that we will tackle in this series. When we are done, the sidebar will look something like this. Okay, the first thing to do is go on Google and find some code to steal. So we're going to open up the browser window, go to Google, and look for HTML Snackbar. And the first result is our old friend W3 Schools. So let's look at that. And if we scroll down, they have an example. We can show the snack bar off this button, and it gives us this little black notification message that animates in and then animates out. So we'll take the example HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and put it into a new Lightning Web Component. So the first thing we'll do is we'll go to our project, create a new Lightning Web Component, and we'll call it Snackbar. And in here, we'll put our JavaScript from W3 Schools, which is right here. And we'll grab the CSS. And for this, we'll have to create our CSS file in Snackbar. Paste it in there. And then finally, this little 2-element snippet of HTML for our template. Okay, so here we have the JS, CSS, and HTML files. Let's look a little bit at what's going to happen here. So first of all, we have badly formatted HTML. Let's tab it in there. We have a button that triggers a JavaScript function, and we have a div with a text message in it with an ID of Snackbar. So let's then go look at snackbar.js, and the my function that's mapped to the on-click handler of the button will get the Snackbar element by ID. So that's the div that has the text in it. It will change the class name to show, and then after 3 seconds, it looks like it runs a timer, and after 3 seconds, it removes the class name show. So with all of that in mind, let's go look at the CSS file. So at the top of the CSS file, we have the Snackbar ID. So this is the div that has the message in it. And it looks like just straight up styling. And here we have the show. So remember, this is the class that gets added and removed in the JavaScript. So when you click the button, show gets added, which shows the message, and then it gets removed, which hides the message. And it looks like there is a half-second fade in and a half-second fade out with 2.5 seconds in between. So that's where you see the little black message fade in and then it fade out. Okay, so that kind of makes sense. The button adds the class, starts the animation, and then shows the message for 2.5 seconds, and then starts the fade out animation, then hides the message. So if we go back and look at the JavaScript, actually, let's start with the HTML first, now that we kind of know how everything works. So we know the Lightning Web Components. The Lightning Web Components have a little bit different syntax for the HTML and the JavaScript. So one thing we'll have to change here is we need to change the way we assign the on-click handler. So we're going to remove the quotes and the trailing parentheses, and we'll just wrap this my function name in the curly brackets. So now when we click the button, we'll get the appropriate function triggered. Okay, The other thing we know is that IDs don't work in Lightning Web Components. So we'll need to change this to a class. So we'll just call the class Snackbar. Okay, so now that should be compatible with Lightning Web Components. So let's go to the JavaScript. This will be a little bit more complicated. First of all, we don't use the function keyword, so we'll get rid of that. And I'm going to fix the tabbing because that just bothers me. Okay, the next thing we have an issue with is that we don't, like we said earlier, we don't get elements by their ID. We get them by the class. So here we will change this to this template query selector. And we will change this. I like single quotes better for JavaScript. I'm used to that. We'll change that to the class selector instead of the ID selector. We also need to change this var to a constant. And I don't like variables named x. That's not very descriptive. So we'll just call this, we'll select all the x's here by hitting Control D while highlighted. And we'll change this to Snackbar as the variable name. Okay, so that's fine. Now, the next issue we have here is the way we are adding or changing the class name of the Snackbar to show and from show. So this right here, if we just set the class name to show, we then lose this Snackbar class name that we're using to identify the element. So we can't do the class assignment like this. So we're going to have to do something else. We'll use the class list to change this. So it's just an add and then a remove rather than a completely wiping it out and replacing it with show. And then down here, completely removing all class designations on the element. So here we go. So we'll Snackbar, class list, add, and then we can put the show class in there. And we'll remove this. And then down here, instead of doing this replace, we will say snackbar.classList remove. And we'll give it the show class to remove. Okay, so with our JavaScript in place, along with, oh, one more thing. We have to go back to our CSS. So if you note in our CSS, the ID selector here, so the pound sign or the hashtag represents an ID selector, which we know we can't use. So we're going to change these to dot, which is the class notation or the class selector syntax. So now dot snackbar, dot show, and dot snackbar. So here's where we will fire up our local LWC development server and see if this is working. So right click on the HTML file and say preview component locally using our desktop browser. Okay, so here we are with the button that should show our little snackbar message. And there's our snackbar message. Oh, it looks like there may be an issue with our hiding the div. So let's look at our dev tools and run that again. And it looks like cannot read properties of null class list. So in the my function of our JavaScript, we're having a null reference pointer. Or we're referencing a null object. Okay, so it looks like, so we didn't completely eradicate the old way of doing this. So we have a snackbar class name equals classless. We don't need this part. So we were messing up our class assignment to that element. So if you look at that, now we have class list add and class list remove. Just missed a piece that we need to modify there. So let's save that. And with our dev tools running, there's our message. It goes away. So one more time without the browser dev tools open. There's our message, and it goes away. Now, you may have noticed when you click that, after the animation, the fade out animation runs, the dialog isn't going away quickly enough. So you get a little flicker of that show message sometimes after it should fade away. What's happening there is that the remove is happening too late in the process. So let's modify this just a little bit so that we remove the show class from the div just a little bit sooner, and I think it'll smooth out the animation. And there we go. So the div goes away after the animation, or at least toward the end of when the animation fades it out. So to the eye, we don't get that little flicker of it coming back. At this point, we don't want our snack bar to be shown as the result of pushing a button. We want it to be shown as the result of another component performing an action. So we need to go back to our JavaScript here, and we need to make this component have or expose an API method that another component can call to show the message. And ideally, we really should have the message configurable so the client can pass the message in to this component. So what we'll do first is we'll create a variable for the message. So we'll say snackbar message, like that. And we will change the HTML such that it uses that for the message. So if in here we say snackbar message, and we don't need this button anymore. That won't be how we trigger the display of our snack bar. And the name my function when you're exposing it to a client, that's not a very good name. So let's call this show snack bar. And we'll give it a parameter so the client can pass in the message to be shown. Now we're going to expose this to another Lightning Web component. So let's add the API attribute, which we also need to import up here. API. So that will allow other components or parent components to call this method or this function. Okay, so that means that down here, we need to assign our variable, our member variable or class variable, however you want to call it, to the parameter that's passed in. So after we select, let's assign the snack bar message. Oh, this dot snack bar message equals message. And that should get us where we want to be on that side. And now we're going to go into the contact me button Lightning Web component and wire up the snack bar so that it shows after we've submitted the contact form. So the first thing is go into HTML, and to the bottom of the HTML of the contact me button, we're going to add an element to the snack bar component. So we'll say C snack bar. So now we have an instance of that snack bar component that we just created. And in the JavaScript for the button, we will first need to add a variable to hold the element for the snack bar. And then in the rendered callback, the same way we get the elements from HTML for the form, we'll say this dot snackbar equals this dot template query selector. And we don't have to use class here. We can actually just say C snackbar, because it's more the element type in this case. Okay, so now we have a snackbar variable. So we can scroll down here, and we want the snackbar to pop up when the create lead method on the Apex controller comes back, either successfully or otherwise. So we can use a promise here. We can say create lead then, and then this just ends up being a function in here. This dot snackbar dot show snackbar. I believe that's how we do the capitalization. And the message will be your request. It's been received. I before E except after C. Yep. Received. Request has been received. So we'll just do the success case for right now. And let's see if that worked. Although in order to test this properly, because we're using the Apex controller, we're going to have to deploy this to our Scratch org and test it there. So let's get the terminal window up and do a deployment. SF project deploy start. Okay, looks like everything's deployed. Now let's open up our Scratch org. Okay, so there's a contact me button. So we go to the preview, hit contact me, fill this out. And let's change this up to make sure we get duplicates here so we know what we're looking at. We'll say Snackbar, and we'll call this test. And some company. If we submit this, we get your request has been received. So let's just verify that our test person came through. We showed in the last video that that part was actually working, but just to show in this video, let's run this selected SOQL query. And there's our Snackbar test lead that we just generated from that form submission. In the next video, we will create the Lightning Web component for this My Skills section that involves a 3-card layout and 3 separate images.